Let's settle ourselves again for a few moments so that we can hear, not just with ears, but with the heart. And I'd like to begin by just taking a few verses of the reading that Pat gave on Proverbs chapter 8. And this, I pray, I'll be consistent and faithful to these words, and that you all will be faithful in the listening. I open my lips to speak what is right. My mouth speaks what is true, for my lips detest wickedness. So says wisdom, the grounding of our life. All the words of my mouth are just. None of them is crooked or perverse. To the discerning, all of them are right. They are upright to those who have found knowledge. So with that beginning, I'd like to share with you the sermon title. Maybe we could just put up there. It is Wise or Just Clever. Wise or just clever. An owl can turn its head around without breaking any of its blood vessels 260 degrees. That's a little bit more than we can do, but he doesn't have to turn his shoulders. He just moves. So he sees everything like a floodlight. A fox is clever, and the focus is just on the prey, just on what he wants to get, nothing else. He just spots it and goes. So with these as a kind of an image, I'm going to begin by sharing with you two stories. And then the story, once again, that Lisa said is difficult to really kind of get. I had to keep pondering this gospel again so I could really get it. I'm not sure I really got it, but I think I got some new angles on it because it's the story of the dishonest manager. So the first story I want to share with you is these three ministers were on a retreat. They were together, and just before they left to go home, one of them said, why don't we just kind of confess to each other? We'll keep it secret, and just, what are the things that you're really struggling with? So the one minister said, I have to tell you that I gamble a bit. Sorry to say that, I'd be ashamed for people to know about it, but I gamble sometimes. And the second minister said, sometimes I have too much to drink, and it's not right. I got a problem with that, but I'm working on it with God's help. And the third minister said, I have a problem with gossip, and I can't wait to get out of here to tell everybody. The other story comes from Jewish folklore. There were tricksters in our history. Jacob was a trickster. He was a conniver. He was clever. Not very wise, but he did some things that weren't quite right. And so lots of the rabbis tell stories. And there's another wonderful story about a man who was caught stealing. And they brought him to the governor. And on the way, the man that was arrested for stealing said to the governor, I have a very, very special secret to tell the king. I have a pomegranate seed that if it's placed properly in the ground, it will produce overnight the fruit. But there's one condition. It can only be planted by someone who never stole, who was never a thief. That can't be me, because I stole. So they brought it up to the king, and the governor said, I have to admit that some years ago, I took something from somebody and I didn't return it. So I can't plant the seed. And the king came along and said, when I was a kid, I stole something, and I even stole my father's bracelet. And one of the other visionaries, or vizier they call him, someone else, and they said, I stole a while back, and I can't do it. So there he is, he dug the hole, and there was nobody that the man that was presenting this option said, none of you can plant the seed. And here I am, a poor beggar that stole some food for myself, and you're going to hang me for that. And the king was so impressed by this ruse that he pardoned the thief. So the story that Jesus is telling us is somewhat similar to those stories about dishonesty. So let's just read it, and I'm going to interpose it with some comments along the way, and all in the light of wisdom. Was the dishonest steward wise, or was he just clever in what he did? There once was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was squandering his property. So he summoned him and said to him, what is this I hear about you? Give me an accounting of your management, because you cannot be my manager any longer. And then the manager did something like what the prodigal did, who had squandered his father's stores. And this story comes right after the story of the prodigal son. And there's a kind of inner dialogue. Remember that the prodigal son, so-called, he's really just the lost son or the younger brother. He started to dialogue with, what can I do? What can I do to make this right? Maybe if my daddy will take me as a servant, I might be able to get back into it. So he tried to work around a deal, similar to the manager. What shall I do now that my master has taken the position away from me? I am not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do, so that when I am dismissed as manager, people may welcome me into their homes. So summoning his master's debtors one by one, he asked the first, how much do you owe my master? He answered, 100 jugs of olive oil. He said to him, take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 50. Then he asked another, how much do you owe? He replied, 100 containers of wheat. Take your bill, make it 80. More dishonesty. What's the owner going to do with more dishonesty? He's just about to fire the manager, and he hears about more conniving, more deals, more cheats. His master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. He was clever. He got himself out of a difficult situation. He wiggled his way out. He did the best with what the cards dealt him. And the owner praised him for that. I wonder what the owner of this big enterprise was thinking. He praised him because maybe he would have, gee, why wouldn't I think of something like that? He did the best with what the cards dealt him. So he lost his job, he didn't get it back, but on the way out he was praised by the owner. And now what we have in the rest are some comments that Jesus makes. For the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. Children of light. Those that are illumined by wisdom. Those that are illumined by the presence of God. Those that have a light within because of God's presence. And yet, the people of this generation are shrewder than people and children of the light. What kinds of decisions do we make when the kingdom is right in front of us, is right within us? We have the gift of the kingdom of Jesus present with us, and all the wisdom that would go with that, so that we can discern what it is that God is asking us to do. And we, like the wise owl, can turn and look at all the different alternatives of life and begin to wonder and praise God for the beauty of what we see, the joy of being alive, the wonder of it, the amazement of it. When we get in touch with being amazed by a simple thing as a beautiful Sunday morning, as seeing each other's faces, if we're just happy and amazed at that, that's wisdom bringing us joy. We don't have to connive about that. We don't have to figure things out. We just let it be. Wisdom was there from the very beginning, and it's wonderful that wisdom is presented as a feminine principle from the beginning. John's Gospel talks that the word, the logos in Greek, Sophia, is also the wisdom word, the word for wisdom, but they're almost identical. And because of the masculine preponderancy and patriarchy, we kind of lean more toward that. But it's good for us to know this Mother Earth has birthed all of us. We are part of this process of being birthed, and it's wonderful. When we get in touch with that, all of the other connivery or figuring things out that we might do with our minds begins to flow away, and we just sit and be in the presence of wisdom. So Jesus continues. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into the eternal homes. I couldn't figure that one out, but I think I did it. I think it's a bit of Jesus being a bit sarcastic. Let me read it this way. Make friends for yourselves by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into their eternal homes. Yeah, what do you get when you just connive? What do you get when you just do things around in ways that aren't quite proper? I could mention some things in the political sphere, but I'm not going to do that. Do your own analysis of the news in the world today, and let yourself say, where is the conniving that's going on? Where is the cleverness? Where is the absoluteness? And people are missing out on light, on wisdom. If the leaders of the world would kindly stop conniving and just be present to the wisdom of being alive, wars would cease. Reparations would take place because there would be love. When the love is absent, anything else you can sweep in like a nasty, clever fox will rob it all away. Jesus continues, whoever is faithful in a very little is faithful also in much. Whoever is dishonest in a very little is dishonest also in much. The lovely story that Lisa's children, and she was presenting about, do we take the change and get something else from what Grandma told us, or what do we do? What do we do? If you're faithful in little, you'll be faithful in much. If you're dishonest in the little things, you'll be dishonest in bigger things. And then Jesus continues, if then you have not been faithful with dishonest wealth, who will entrust you with real riches? And if you have not been faithful with what belongs to another, who will give you what is your own? Well, I think what that means is if you have not been faithful with someone else's things, How do you know that other people are going to be faithful with your stuff? They might steal from you. If you steal, they steal. These are questions that just kind of rise up from Jesus making a commentary on this story. No slave can serve two masters. For a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. Now, wealth is sort of a contemporary of saying mammon. Mammon is the Hebrew way of talking about profit and wealth. And you can't do both. You can't do it. So as we step out of this church service today into the world that's waiting us, into your own personal world, just know that who's your master? Which is it? Because there are some issues that they're incomprehensible. They're not compatible with each other. Wealth and dedication to God are not compatible. Pick one or the other. So my prayer for all of us is that we can learn how to pick the right ones. Pick love. Pick reverence. Pick joy. Pick honesty. Pick the absence of those things that we saw last week in those thieves of joy, of arrogance, criticism, entitlements, all the long list, and you can come up with your own, that rob you of joy. If you're walking in wisdom, there will be a platform, like a floodlight of joy going on inside you. So widen your gaze, my brothers and sisters. When you find yourself being constricted by obsessive thinking about something or wrestling with it, step back from it. Just let it be. You don't have to drop it so much as let's let it be, because your wide-angle look at the wholeness of your life will include all of those characteristics of the kingdom, and you will thus be set free. Amen.